A Norfolk Southern train consisting of 150 rail cars derailed and crashed at 8:55 p.m. on February the 3rd, 2023. The town of East Palestine, Ohio has a population of about 4,700. Many residents could see the fire from their homes. Others parked nearby to watch the flames. What likely no one in town knew the night of the initial crash was that some of those train cars contained highly toxic chemicals. The next morning, as the fire raged on, more information came to light. Roughly 20 cars were listed as carrying hazardous materials, like vinyl chloride and butyl acrylate. The railway at the center of the derailment was Norfolk Southern Railroad. They presented two options: allow the fire to burn out but run the risk of deadly shrapnel if the cars exploded, or guarantee an explosion of the toxic chemicals in what officials referred to as a controlled release.
Why'd you put air quotes under controlled?
Because it didn't seem very controlled. It seemed out of control.
Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro signed off on the controlled release. Residents within a 1 by 2 mile area of the crash site were forced to evacuate the town without knowing when they would be able to return. 3 days later, around 4 p.m., the toxic train cars were set ablaze. The explosion looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. Residents watched on live feeds in nearby safe locations as a pitch-black plume of smoke rose into the afternoon sky. They returned home 2 days later. The surface of nearby creeks were scattered with oily rainbow bubbles, and small fish floated belly up. If the local streams looked this dangerous, residents feared the safety of the well water that ran under the town. Officials said the air quality tests came back safe, and the tap water was fine to drink.
Are you confident enough, sir, that you yourself would drink it?
Absolutely. If I was there right now, I would drink it. Look, the experts told us it would be a long shot if there's any problem with this water, because these are deep wells that feed the municipal water supply there.
Residents are back in town now, but they feel symptoms, not safety.
We're still experiencing almost like your tongue was scalded, off and on headaches.
My family lives less than a half mile away from the tracks. People are getting sick. You'll get a headache. I started to get almost a tightness in my chest, like shortness of breath.
DJ Yogley owns a sports streaming business in town. He welcomed us and said we were the first that agreed to conduct the interview inside. Immediately, we understood why.
I can't even describe this smell. It's like a gas/nail polish. The toxicologist came in on Sunday and said that it is butyl acrylate, which is a toxin that was on the train, which is a smell that, if you go around town right now, continues to grow throughout
Do you mind if we continue this interview outside of?
Yep, absolutely.
Oh,
yep.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's making me lightheaded. I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeez. It's making my eyes water.
Yep. But this is the stuff that they tell us, you're okay. Yeah, you're good.
People that I've seen on some of the reports are saying, I've been told it's safe, but I can still smell it. So they're seeing that as a contradictory in terms, or that there's a problem, right? There's something new. But I think it's important to just consider that it may be at a concentration below what would be considered harmful. And so that's one of the questions that I still have out with the CDC and the EPA is, what detection technologies are being used? What are the threshold values that are being utilized as the exposure guidelines for this incident to discriminate? This is safe, this is not safe.
Dave Anderson lives in New Galilee, Pennsylvania, over 4 miles from the crash site. The damage went far beyond the evacuation zone. He wants answers, a common sentiment among residents after the explosion.
My first phone calls were to local elected officials, just trying to find information and not getting a response, getting recordings and no return phone calls. So obviously the concern and frustration starts to build.
After videos of a contaminated local stream went viral on social media, Governor DeWine addressed the matter.
A section of Sulphur Run that is very near the crash site remains severely contaminated. We knew this. We know this.
He also said that what we're seeing happening in the local streams is the water being dammed in some places and rerouted with fresh water in others to divert around contaminated areas. These makeshift dams were installed after the controlled release to stop the contamination, rather than beforehand. However, signs like this around town have not instilled confidence in the safety of the residents.
I mean, you come through town and the crooks have caution tape around them, and there's people in hazmat filtering the water. It doesn't seem safe. I mean, the numbers are coming back and they say that everything's okay, but it just doesn't seem that way. J.D. Vance was in town today, really good, taking the press and just answering questions.
We have a community that's been affected by this tragedy that is justifiably very worried about what's going on. And so we need to give people confidence that this is a safe place to live, to work, to raise a family. We did actually go to Leslie Run Creek just to see what it looks like. And I gotta say, it really is worrying. I took a stick and I stuck it in the bed of the creek and pulled it along, and chemical bubbled out of the ground.
As for testing, many townspeople said that when the tests were conducted at their homes, the EPA and contractors from Norfolk Southern were in attendance. Senator, I've heard from some residents that they are experiencing testing involved with the EPA and Norfolk Southern, and it seems like a bit of a conflict of interest.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what we've heard today, and this is something that I became aware of, I would say, last night, and we've tried to follow up on it today, is that the contractor that's doing a lot of the testing is employed by Norfolk Southern. Understandably, a lot of people say, does that pose a conflict of interest? And so we're going to run down a little bit whether there are alternative testing options and how to ensure that that conflict of interest doesn't mean that people aren't getting good tests.
Is that something that is normal in the world of, post-disaster testing?
I think in a situation like this that is pretty grand in scale and scope, that it does make sense that all available resources would be marshaled in order to try to get the most effective and swift response possible.
I think that's perfectly reasonable because one may have resources that the other does not, for example.
We're back in town now. You lifted the evacuation order. We're drinking the water. At least we need to know, are we safe right now? Are our children safe to be able to be here? We just need people that are local leaders, regional leaders, state leaders, and federal leaders to step up to the plate and help us. We just want answers, and they're not giving them.
The village held a packed town hall in an attempt to provide clarity to residents. However, Norfolk Southern, the railroad at the center of it all, skipped at the last minute out of concerns for their safety.
What about our safety, but there was 50 state troopers there. There's our town police there. There was no reason for them to ever feel like they were in danger. They need to do the right thing. It starts by saying we really screwed up because we don't really know the ramifications of what they did yet. We saw that plume of smoke go up. It's frightening. What is that going to do to our kids and grandkids and possible birth defects and disease? I mean, God.
Here's the one shot. The drone would have been
Holy
up
crap.
there. Isn't that insane? I noticed a residue, like on this, we have a white table on the porch, and so I wiped it.
That's miles from the crash site.
Yeah, it's a way more significant event than people are letting on.
After not getting answers from Norfolk Southern, Anderson and a few neighbors filed a lawsuit against the railroad company. His main complaints are potential long-term health implications to him and his family and the well-being of his farm.
I have a married daughter. She's pregnant. She was here actually that night with us. You have to think about things like that and long-term health effects to your kids. I mean, that's your biggest concern always.
Even though all the agencies that are performing testing and trying to make sure that the area is safe, I believe that they're doing everything that they can to do that in a safe, effective, and timely way. However, I still wouldn't let that overrule your five senses and your common sense. So if you taste something in the water or, in the food, don't eat it. If you experience unpleasant odors or vapors in your home, maybe go stay with some family for a little while.
Health is top of mind for everyone. And while no one can say for certain if and how this could affect their health long term, business owners are seeing an immediate impact.
This is a farm town. They're talking about the animals, the livestock, and there's a lot of people whose livelihood depend on those animals that if they're tainted in any way, they're done.
I have 100 animals or more here. There's a whole list of farmers, dairy farmers, who their cows stopped giving milk and stopped eating for a couple days. This is literally my lifelong dream, to own a farm. I left home, went into service, got a great job, saved. I married a great person that her dream was to live in a house like the Waltons. And so that's what we worked for, and that's what we did. And we have 7 children we raise here. We grow 80% of our food here. It's all in jeopardy right now. I mean, seriously, you have to face it.
McKim's Honey Vine and Winery has yet to officially open for business. They plan to launch on St. Patrick's Day weekend. Their newly renovated winery sits across the street from the crash site. So that footage you just saw is from the pole that's over that direction, and it's showing the train tracks that are right over here, completely parallel with this road and with the front of this new restaurant.
We've invested everything we've had put into this place. And we had private parties booked here, and even weddings, people wanting to get married. And right across the street, you can see everything. You can see where they tore it up, where it all burned. We have pictures from our cameras, and you could just see the plumes of smoke for 4 days, and then they lit it all on fire. And we have a patio area outside here, and who's going to want to sit out there now and look at all this that's happened?
Within 2 days, the railroad was repaired, and the first train barreled through downtown before residents were even moved back into their homes.
Controlled burn was on Monday, so on Tuesday, there were replacement rails allowing trains to run through that area. You cannot dig out and clean up an area if it's covered by railroad tracks, and there are trains going over it. So the fact that they replaced the rails, I think, suggests they're much more focused in reopening the railway than in cleaning up this community.
The day they released this to come back, within 3 minutes, the first railroad cars came through. Who thinks that's acceptable? I mean, I get upset when my kids bring home a C on a report card. I get mad when I drop eggs in the kitchen. You know, where does this put me? I'm out of my mind.
Corporations exist for profit for the shareholders, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there is moral responsibility, professional behaviors. Professional behavior doesn't ignore risk. They understand, you would think, the financial implications of hurting people, but they didn't seem to respond effectively.
This is what criminals do. They make a mistake and then they go hide in their office and they try to figure out, weasel their way out of it. How can we not pay them? How can we pay this person to pay them off? We see it all the time. That's corruption. Call it whatever you want. I'm not totally like a conspiracy-minded person, but and I also know how real people work. We may just be a little flyover place or a place you drive by and don't stop, but the railroad doesn't do anything for us. It causes noise pollution for us. It causes traffic problems. Now we have big problems.
Now it's business as usual for Norfolk Southern, but residents are still uncertain of East Palestine's future.
I've lived here for 36 years, and in this house specifically for 15 years. Me and my husband bought it when we were expecting our oldest. You know, this is all of our home, and the kids love it here. They're very active and involved in stuff, and it is heartbreaking to think about leaving, but I'm also terrified to stay. I hope that's a possibility, but not sure, so.
We spoke with a lot of local business owners too. We're concerned about, is my town going to be permanently toxic? Is anyone ever going to come back and want to eat at my restaurant? Do you have any long-term projections of what you think the future of the town will hold in terms of its toxicity and other potential ramifications?
I mean, if you think of other hazardous materials incidents that have happened across the U.S., many of those areas have bounced back to normal. So I don't think that just because there was a single exposure here means that the town is completely doomed. But I do agree that it's the response and the dissemination of information to the individuals who live there that will really help dictate how the community itself responds to the event.
No fault to our leaders. I think they're doing the best they can. This is a lot bigger than our small town, and I think they need help.
The government needs to be here. Like, where's Joe Biden?
I mean, where's the environmentalists? Where's the people that? Why aren't they storming our town? And I'm calling out to you right now. Where are you? Where are you? You worry about cooktops that for gas. You worry about that. Where are you? The people that want to hug the trees. I love you guys. Where are you at? Come out. Come out.
We understand it. Not everybody's gonna care. But would you care if it was your town? Would you care if it was your kids that you weren't able to give them drinking water? We're just looking to get hands in the pile right now. And if people wanna help us and say, hey, we're with you and we'll do whatever it takes. But at the top of that pile better be our local leaders, better be our state reps, and better be our president.